Good morning, everyone. I think this is the first Dharma talk since October community retreat for me. I was not in town on Sunday, on weekends. So I really appreciate, all of your effort to keep this Sunday morning activities, and especially people who gave talks. On Sunday morning, I'd like to continue to talk on this book, Opening the Hand of Thought. I think I started to talk this in July or August, and I think I gave more than 10 talks, and still I'm page 11. So it's a long way to go. Now, since October retreat, I have been talking on the section Practice and Persimmons. This is section 1 of this book. And in the beginning, Okumura Roshi used the example of persimmon. If I start to talk again, it takes more than 1 hour. But usually, or kind of persimmon that is very astringent and not eatable. And there are another kind that is sweet persimmon. It's very delicious. And he used this, persimmon, how to transform astringent persimmon into a sweet persimmon. That means how we can transform our, astringent person into a sweet person like Buddha. How can we make this transformation possible? Not only each one of us as an individual person, but also how can we make a community of human beings, any group of human beings, and also human world. In it there are many, pains, suffering, sorrows, problems, conflict, fighting. How can we make this into more kind of healthy place to live, healthy and joyful place to live? That is not the purpose, but that is how we practice what Buddha taught. And then he started to talk about the 4 seals, or 4 dharma seals. and in the beginning of his discussion about those 4 seals, he introduced 2 kinds of truth. This is not 2 truths in Buddhism, but this is 2 truths, 2 kinds of truths in Western philosophy. That is truth of fact and truth of reason. Truth of fact is in this book, the translator used reality of chance or accident or contingency, which may happen, may or may not happen, depending upon causes and conditions. But another truth is truth of reason or necessity, whether not depending upon the conditions, causes and conditions, but it's always true without any, limitation. So he said there are 2 kinds of truths, and in this translation, that truth, second kind of truth, is mentioned as undeniable reality. And he said, whether in whatever conditions living beings have to die, this is undeniable reality. Whether it happened or not happened, 100% we need to die. And that kind of truth or reality we cannot escape, we cannot negate, we cannot even, almost doesn't need to discuss it true or not. It's really true. And the reason why he introduced those two kind of truths is Buddhist teaching is based on that kind of undeniable reality. And these four seals or four dharma seals are in one of the ways to summarize entire Buddhist teaching. And those, four seals, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. First one is Issai Kaiku. I'm sorry. This is for me, you don't need to read this. Second is Shogyo Mujo. Third is Shoho Muga. And the fourth is Nehanjakujo. First one is everything is suffering. Everything is suffering. And second thing is everything is impermanent. So suffering, impermanence, and egolessness or non-substance. Or anatoma. Nothing is fixed. Everything is empty. And fourth is nirvana. It's tranquility or calmness or serenity. Those are four dharma seals. And in all Buddhist traditions or teachings, those four points can be found. And four seals means almost like a certificate. That means if we can find those 4 points in someone's teaching, we can say this teaching is Buddhism. If we cannot find those 4, this is something else. That is what seal mean. Seal is like a stamp. Stamp or seal in Chinese or Japanese culture is same as signature. So if we find these seals, these points, then we can say this belongs to Buddha. So same, the word in is seal in Japanese, and this in is same as mudra. When we during the last Gendo, we say we showed Buddha mudra throughout our body and mind. That mudra and this in is the same thing. So when we find these 4 points in certain teaching, we can consider that teaching, that particular teaching, can be called Buddhism or Buddha's teaching. So these 4 are really important. And Uchiyama Roshi discussed first and second. and actually, these 1, 2, 3, this number is made by me. Common order is this way. First, everything is impermanent. And usually it said, therefore, everything is suffering. Therefore, everything has no ego, no substance. And Nehan Nirvana. But because of my understanding, I changed this order. My understanding of those 4 points or seals is second and third, impermanence and egolessness is the way things are. And if we are blind or ignorant on this reality, then everything becomes suffering. But when we awaken to this reality of all beings, then our life becomes nirvana. So, to me, these 4 dharma seals is not 4 independent items, but this shows one message from Buddha that is depending upon this reality of impermanence and egolessness or anatman. There are 2 opposite ways of life, possibly. One is the way we live as everything is suffering. And this everything includes really everything. That means happiness or success or joy, all those things. Usually we think positive is included within this everything. If we are ignorant of impermanence and egolessness and chase after happiness and escaping from suffering, our life becomes samsara. Chasing after something we want and escaping from something we don't want. This makes our life samsara, always running, either running after something or running from something. And there's no peaceful foundation in that way of life. But when we awaken to the reality of impermanence and egolessness, or another Buddhist expression, emptiness, or interdependent origination, then we found it's not necessary to run after something or escaping from something, but we can find a peacefulness when we settle down right now, right here. That is nirvana. So nirvana is not somewhere else, but right here, right now, we can find nirvana. I think this is really basic message from Buddha, based on one reality. We can live, this way or that way, depending upon, whether we awaken to that reality or not. And Uchiyama Roshi first discussed about impermanence in page 7, and next he started discuss about suffering. But as I said during the community retreat, he didn't say anything, almost anything about suffering. He only said, what he said, actually suffering in the deepest sense is all of that. All of that means everything in our life. In other words, as long as this matter of death remains unclear, this matter of death for human beings means impermanence. Unless we really understand impermanence, everything becomes suffering. Everything in the world suffers. This is the meaning of the idea that all sentient beings are suffering. it is something that isn't talked about much simply because most people wouldn't have any idea of what it's about. And he doesn't explain what suffering is. So I talked about suffering using the book What Buddha Taught. But in this case, suffering is dukkha. And today I start to talk on the section Uchiyama Roshi discussed on the third dharma seal. That is, everything is no substance or anatma. If you have this book, page 11, third paragraph of page 11, I'm going to read paragraph by paragraph. The third undeniable reality is that all things lack substantial, independent existence. This is Shohaku. Since nothing is substantial by itself, just as it is, there is nothing to hold on to. This means your thoughts are not something to hold on to either. So the only thing to do is to let go of all that comes into your head. I think we need some explanation here. The third seal is everything is egoless or lack of self-nature. This means there's no fixed entity in each and everything, including ourselves. And I often say, as I often say, this Atma is same as self-identity. When we are born, we are very small. Since then, for first 15 or 20 years, our body, getting bigger and bigger. We grow, and it stay for certain, size. And after we become 50, our body start to shrink, and and disappear. So the condition of our body is always changing, and our mind is also always changing. The way I thought when I was 5 years old, or 15 years old, 25 years old, 35, 45, and now I'm almost 60. Each time or stage of my life, the way I think was really different. But somehow we think, 58 years ago, Shohaku was Shohaku. And 58 years later, I'm still Shohaku. So there's something which doesn't change. This something which doesn't change goes through change. So that's why, that is how our mind works. So I have to say, I have been changing. And this I doesn't change. If I also changes, then we cannot say I am changing. There's this I is not the same thing. We cannot say 50 years ago I was already Shohaku, and 50 years later I'm still Shohaku. If we don't think this I is the same thing, we cannot say whether this has been changing or not. So our way of thinking need this something doesn't change. That is a kind of a requirement from our way of thinking. I mean, when we study logics, very kind of a, how can I say, basis of logics. We study three principles. Well, the first one is law of identity. It said A should be always A. And the second is laws of contradiction. A cannot be non-A, right? And third is excluding the middle. There's nothing between A and non-A. That is very basic, rules of logics. And I think this is too simple. And now, philosophers think much more improved way of logics. But I think this basic way we think, our mind works. If, for example, a baby, if baby is a baby, baby should be always baby. But, if we can say baby is sometimes baby, but sometimes not baby, then we can't communicate. Baby should be always baby. And baby cannot be something which is not a baby. And there's nothing in the middle. That means neither baby nor not baby. There's no such thing. That is a very basic way our mind works. So, this identity is really important to think and also to communicate. But actually, as reality, baby does not always baby. Baby needs to become a boy or girl. So within, within babyhood, to be a baby, a baby has a power to negate the babyhood. That's why baby can become something which is not baby. That is life. Life has a power to change. Power to change is the power to negate this present condition. So baby is baby, 100% baby, but within this 100% babyhood, baby has a power or energy to grow. To grow means to negate babyhood. And based on this very basic logic, we cannot explain this change, this life, which changes, or impermanence. So this idea, everything has egoless or non-substance means nothing is fixed. That means, baby can something which is not a baby. So this basic, or according to Buddhism, undeniable reality and the way we think is kind of contradicted. That's why we cannot, grasp this reality which is always changing without any fixed identity. Cannot be explained and even think or grasp using, our concept. As a concept, baby is always baby, but actual baby is beyond, the concept of a baby. That's why why in Buddhism it is said the reality, it's real reality as a baby. It's there, but still, this small living being cannot be called a baby. Yeah, or if we call it of course, as a conventional truth, this is a baby, and that is true, and we agree. But from this point of view, more kind of a basic, undeniable reality, this baby is beyond a concept of a baby. That's why this, getting bigger and bigger and become something which is not a baby. And, each and every stage, life has energy to negate itself. And this life force or energy to negate itself is in Zen expression called going beyond Buddha. This is kind of a important expression in Dogen Zen's teaching, Butsu Kojoji. So not only a baby, but Buddha is also life. So there's no fixed stage or what's the word? Concept as Buddha. So to reach Buddhahood is not that, or to become Buddha is not the goal of our practice. We have to always going beyond Buddha. So each moment we need to go beyond. That is how we grow, physically and spiritually and mentally. That means we have a power or energy to make change. That is what to live means. So it's not possible to call this as Shohaku or as a Buddhist priest, or call baby as a baby. Of course, on the conventional level, it works, but as real reality, baby is not a baby. This kind of logic can be found in almost all the Buddhist sutras. For example, in the Diamond Sutra, it said Buddha is Buddha because Buddha is not Buddha. If Buddha is Buddha, that is a concept. But because Buddha is not simply a concept, Buddha is something not Buddha. That is how things are changing or impermanent. But when we grasp this thing, this is a reading glass in conventional ground, and it's not mistake as a conventional usage of words. This is a pair of reading glass. But this is not really a pair of reading glass. A pair of reading glass is just a name we human beings give to this stuff, this thing. And this thing is a reading glass only when I can use this as a reading glass. I have many broken pair of reading glass, and I don't call them reading glass anymore. This is cheap one, so I don't care to be broken. This is I bought this maybe about $10 or so. So I don't care so much. So I don't try to fix it. I buy new one. So on my bookshelf there are few pair of reading glass, and yet I don't call them reading glass anymore, and they are not reading glass anymore. Reading glass is the name of in certain condition which can function and help me to read. But once it's broken, it's not a reading glass anymore. It's a garbage or junk, and everything the same. This is a marker only while this can be used as a marker. When it's dried up, again this becomes a junk or garbage. I just throw it into a garbage can. So everything is really has no fixed entity or as a self-nature. If baby has its own self-nature, then baby cannot become a boy or girl. Baby have to be always baby, permanently baby. So the concept of a baby and the actual baby is really different. It's like a difference between, actual thing and a photo of that thing. When we take a photo, then, for example, my photo, my photo of when I think my oldest photo of mine was when I was 3 or 4 years old, and so that means it was taken more than 50 years ago. The Shohaku in that photo hasn't changed at all. It's still, Shohaku when Shohaku was 4 or 5 years old. So the photo doesn't change. The image in the photo doesn't change, but that Shohaku and this Shohaku is completely different. And the picture of the world we create using our words and concept within our mind is the same as photo, and the photo doesn't change, but real things has been always changing, and yet we think the picture of the world is real reality, and things are changing is not reliable. But I think it's opposite. So when we really awaken to this impermanence and egolessness, we see this, way of grasping things, and also making judgment based on those concepts doesn't really work. It works only in the conventional world of human beings, and beyond that, it doesn't work. Last weekend I was in Pittsburgh. We had a weekend retreat at a Catholic retreat center, and the retreat center has 33 acres. It's a huge place and beautiful place, and they have deers and wild turkeys. And one morning I saw the flock of wild turkeys, walking on the ground. It was really wonderful to see, wild turkeys freely walking and no one trying to catch them before Thanksgiving. But at that time I was kind of astonished that they are really turkeys, nothing else. But they don't know they are turkeys. It's really strange thing. Only we think they are turkeys. They don't really know what they are. They don't think. And yet they are 100% turkey. This is really amazing things to me, because I'm already thinking what I am. As a human being, we have to think who I am. Now I'm here as a speaker, so I think now I am a Buddhist priest, and people expect me, talking about. And Sai is a control or operate. So Atman is something which is permanent. That means which doesn't change, which doesn't appear and doesn't cease. It's permanent. It's always there, and it should be only one. If there's two Atman in ourselves, it's problems. So Atman should be only one, and it is a owner of this body and mind, and that operate this body and mind. This body and mind are, impermanent and always changing, and be born, stay for a while, changing the shapes and disappear. So this body and mind is within time. It's not, and it's changing. It cannot be permanent. And it's a collection of 5 skandhas. It's not one. And Atman is the owner of this body and mind, which operate and control this body and mind. So in that, Atman is like a owner of a car. Car, if the owner is permanent, unfortunately, the owner of the car is not permanent, but one person owns a car, and the owner or driver operates the car, and the car is like our body and mind. So there's some owner and user or operator of this body and mind, which doesn't change. That is the Atman Buddha negated. So it doesn't mean Shohaku is not here. Shohaku's body and mind is here, but there's no Shohaku besides the 5 skandhas, besides body and mind. This body and mind has no owner called Shohaku, but only 5 skandhas. That is what Atman means. When we are born, we are tiny, and since then, our body start to grow and keep growing until we became like 20 years old, and we stop growing, but maintain that condition or shape for sometimes, and our body start to shrink and disappear. So our body is always changing, and our mind, how our mind function is also always changing. So our body and mind are always changing, but somehow we think, 58 years ago I was Shohaku was Shohaku, and when I was a boy, still that was Shohaku. And when I was a teenager, still that was Shohaku. And when I was in 20 years old, or in my 20s, I was Shohaku. And now I'm 58, still Shohaku. So Shohaku is going through the changes, all this changes. But Shohaku never change. There's something which doesn't change. This something which doesn't change goes through that change of condition and situations each moment. If we don't think in this way, it's really difficult to understand what is happening. If everything is changing really and nothing which doesn't change, then I cannot call me yesterday that was Shohaku, because it's different. So this is a kind of I think necessity or request of the way we think. If we assume there's something which doesn't change, like a Shohaku beside this body and mind, we cannot talk even who is this. I couldn't say I was born in 1948 because it's not certain that the person who was born in 1948 and the person who was living 2006 is the same one or not. There's no guarantee, right? But because we see the continuity, we think the baby who was born in 1948 was same person, and that person has been living within very different conditions and situations, and became 58. I think I'm more than middle-aged person now, and not too old, but 58-year-old person. Unless we assume there's something which doesn't change, we cannot, think or grasp, this continuity of life is same person. So I think as far as we think using our brain, that means using the concept, we need our way of thinking or our logic need identity. Identity is one of the three very basic principles of logics. And logic doesn't like a contradiction and doesn't like something between two different things. So actually I think this Atman is how can I say, requirement in the way we think, we understand. Otherwise there's no such things. And what Buddha said is there's no such things which doesn't change. The reality here is only ever-changing 5 skandhas. There's no one who own and operate this body and mind. But this body and mind somehow function as Shohaku. And as a collection of causes and conditions, somehow Shohaku is now a Buddhist priest because of my karma. So I try to work as a Buddhist priest or a teacher. That's why I'm trying to speak about Buddhist teaching. So, the Shohaku as a collection of 5 skandhas is there as a temporary condition, but there's no such Shohaku which does not change. Do you see the difference of these two? And when Buddha said no self, that means some permanent entity as Shohaku beside these 5 skandhas. But Shohaku as a collection of 5 skandha is here. It's same as an example or analogy often used in Buddhism is like waterfall. For example, Niagara Fall. There's no such things called Niagara Fall. It's just a continuity of flowing water from high place to low place. So there's no such things called a Niagara Fall. If we take water from Niagara Fall and drink it, it becomes me. So any water in the fall is not the fall. So there's no such things exist called Niagara Fall. It's just a collection of all different elements. But Niagara Fall as a phenomena, as a movement, or even the happening, is really there. There's a lot of energy in the flows of water, and so the real Niagara Fall and the photo or painting of the fall is completely different things. The photo is just an image, but actual fall is really there. So we cannot say there's no Niagara Fall. But we also cannot say there is such things called Niagara Fall, which doesn't change. That's the difference. And the self is the same thing. So, depending upon what we think of, what kind of concept or meaning we have, Buddha's answer was yes or no. But we have to, when we study the self, we have to study the self, so study the self from very many different perspectives. As in Buddhism, this self or Atman that is permanent, only one, the owner of this body and mind, and control or operate this body and mind. That such thing doesn't exist. That is just a concept. But this person, this collection of body and mind, or 5 skandhas, is really there, and we have to take care of this body and mind. That is the self. Dogen, Buddha talks about in Dhammapada, and Dogen talks about in Genjo Koan, and Okumura Roshi talks about in this book. So please make that point clear. This is really contradiction, but we have to understand why Buddha said to, at least on the surface, contradicted. Anyway, after he quoted Dogen's words from Genjo Koan, he wrote something like this. it is not easy to understand the deeper layers of this passage of Dogen without giving a great deal of thought to how the word self is being used. For example, in the opening line where Dogen quotes the study and practice of the Buddha way with the study and practice of Jiko or self, Jiko is being used in its broadest universal sense. Broadest universal sense. In the next line, however, it is different. Although the line appears paradoxical that learning about Jiko is or self is forgetting about Jiko. What Dogen is saying is that in learning about Jiko in the broadest sense, that is, as our universal identity, we have to forget or let go of all the narrow ideas we might have about who we are. So here, Tom Wright point out there are two different self. One is a self as a narrow idea of who I am, and the self which is universal. I have a question about this statement by Tom Wright. I mean, I have different idea. I don't think these two are two different self. If we think, there are two different self, which is universal self and individual or ego-centered self, and we have to study or learn the universal self, but we have to forget the small ego-centered deluded self. There are two kinds of self, and one we have to study, another we have to forget. I think this interpretation is very dualistic, and I don't think there are two different kinds of self. So far, self is really difficult things to really understand. So please understand that self is difficult. To understand what self means is really difficult. When you read this book, please be careful what self means in each time, in this case, Okumura Roshi uses. What is a self? Let me read another paragraph. He said, to illustrate this point, Okumura Roshi used to bring up many concrete examples. On a crowded train, and in Japan, that is a supremely concrete event. Forgetting or not clinging to thoughts of who we are in terms of our status, age, or gender means to get up and give our seat to someone who looks much more tired than we are, without thinking about doing a good deed or being well thought of. The same spirit comes up in not clinging to a feeling of frustration when we have to cook for the group and won't be able to sit with everyone else. This is about Tenzo during sesshin. Tenzo have to cook in the kitchen and cannot sit in the zendo. If the purpose of sesshin is sitting or zazen practice, then Tenzo cannot practice. But somehow, when we are in charge of cooking, just cooking, that is the way we study the universal self, and we forget the ego-centered self. I think that is what Tom Wright is saying. Or not getting upset because we have been asked to clean the toilet instead of our teacher's room. Fear no one will see that, where no one will see what good work we are doing. The examples are limitless in all our lives. So he picked up very concrete actions in our daily lives. How to study the self and how to forget the self. But I'm not so comfortable to this kind of interpretation about Okumura Roshi's teaching on the self. Not only Okumura Roshi, but also on Dogen's teaching. I don't think Dogen is saying we have to study the so-called universal self, and we have to forget the ego-centered self. Somehow different. And I have been thinking, what is the difference? And to me, still it's kind of difficult to clearly point out what the difference. But probably, I think the main point is when Tom Wright pick up those examples that we cling to our what I want, what I like, what I want to do. And yet we let go of my desire and do something that overall situation or condition of the community require. When we make that kind of choice, whether I want to do what I want to do, or I should forget my personal desire but try to do it's needed or necessary or requested. When we are making that kind of distinction and making choice, that is done by really this person, and I think this person and so-called universal self is not really different. Do you understand what I mean?
In a way, they can't be different. They can't
Right.
be completely different.
So in Dogen's saying, the self we have to study and the self we have to forget is exactly the same self to me. If we make self into two, and one is good self, another is bad self, or even in Zen teachings, some Zen teachers use small self and big self. That kind of way of teaching or interpretation is still kind of dualistic. So how can we understand and describe in a very undualistic way, non-dualistic way, is kind of my core now. And I think I understand what I want to say, but I have no clear way to express using words. So if you have some idea, please help me, please.
I think Stephen Mitchell used metaphor of a dirty window, like the self. So by zazen, we clean the window or study the dirt, but it's still a window.
fear is that from?
Stephen Mitchell, also translator. I don't know what
Mm. Yeah, that is another problem. That is another famous metaphor in Buddhism. Like empty space, and that's our self nature is empty. Is like an empty space. There's no that. It's very always clean and clear, but somehow that came from and defiled the space, defiled our life. So we have to keep our room clean. That is one understanding of Buddhist teaching. Famous Zen teaching, about the verses of sixth ancestor Huinan and his dharma brother Jinshu are the same examples. The Jinshu said, our life is like a bright mirror. And yet somehow, that come from outside and cloud the brightness of the mirror. So Jinshu said we have to always keep polishing the mirror. Try and not to allow that stick on the mirror. That is one understanding of Buddhist practice. But Hinan said, our life has no mirror. And there's nothing from the beginning. So there's no way to that stick on the mirror. To really understand that nothingness is kind of enlightenment according to Huinan in that story. So the wind and that, I think the same analogy. If there's something clean or pure, and yet there's something dirty came from outside. So we have to try not to clean, not to allow that on the window. Is one understanding.